Welcome to Pera's Playbook. This is your host, Alex Pera. Let's open up our playbook and see who our guest is. Please enjoy. Welcome to episode 170 of Pera's Playbook. Today we're joined by Madie Ambrose. She played water polo for the University of Michigan. So happy to have her on. How's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat. Water polo is not a sport that I know very much about. I mean, we'll talk about it later on, but it's one of those sports that people watch during the Olympics, and I feel like they don't pay much attention to it unless you're in the world of water polo when it's not on. But it's fun to watch during the Olympics, so maybe we should all pay attention a little bit more.
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely a very niche sport.
Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of those sports. People get crazy about them during the Olympics, and then as soon as the
Mhm.
Olympics are over, they just forget about them. In 4 years, they're right back in there. Which it's strange if you enjoy it that much for that couple of weeks. Why not watch it a little bit more? But I don't know. I guess we pay more attention to all of the other sports that that are regularly on TV or talked about by ESPN and whatnot.
Mhm.
Well, let's start by talking about your recruiting and choosing University of Michigan. You were coming from California, so that's quite a ways across the country.
Mhm.
But when did your recruiting start, and how did it start? Did schools just start reaching out or whatnot?
Yeah, so recruiting looks a little bit different for everybody, especially in water polo. So I grew up in Southern California, which is, I would say, the biggest water polo hub you could find. It's just a very aquatic based community. So I grew up swimming and playing aquatic sports, surfing and whatnot. And then when I was about 10 years old, I started playing club water polo. Every high school had a club aquatics team. So water polo was super popular. So I started playing when I was 10. Figured out it was my sport pretty quick and was like, I'm gonna stick with it. Started playing in all the different tournaments, playing at competitive levels. I played a little bit of it's called ODP, Olympic Development Program. So it's kind of like a feeder into the national team. So played a couple of tournaments with that team and did a bunch of camps and whatnot. And then in eighth grade, I came out to Michigan because my family's from here, and played at the University of Michigan water polo camp. Fell in love with Michigan, and that's kind of when I caught the attention of the water polo coach at Michigan, who is no longer there, but was there for a pretty decent amount of time. So in eighth grade, he pretty much was like, I would like to have you on my team eventually, and gave me just a list of things I should start working at. And then got into high school, started playing in high school. It was definitely a different experience in high school. I didn't have a great coach, so I kind of was on my own. So I played a lot of club, and high school is more of a fun side, fun way to play, stay in shape, whatnot. Wasn't super competitive until my senior year. My team went to CIF for the first time in school history and made it to the finals, ended up getting second place, and then we won our conference for the first time in I think over 12 years. 12 years. So that was pretty exciting. And so I started getting recruited by coaches. You're allowed to talk to them June going into your junior year. Started talking to coaches in June. Heard from quite a few different schools, Indiana, Hawaii, UCSB and UCSD. ASU, Michigan was my number one though, and I pretty much knew I wanted to come to Michigan. Since I was little. It's always been a dream school, just watching them play football growing up. And then my club coach was a goalie at the University of Michigan. And so I was like, okay, I want to follow in her footsteps type of thing. And so then I got brought out on a recruiting trip in the fall of my senior year. It was the University of Michigan women's water polo ring ceremony weekend. So they won their conference championships the year before and they're honored. So I got to watch them walk out on the field and get them up on the big house big screen. And so that was like really exciting. And that was, I think, kind of the moment where it was like, when you're deciding what school you want to play sports at, you have to think about like all of the like factors. And it was like, is this a school I could see myself at if water polo didn't work out type of thing? And for me, I never thought I would not finish water polo for all 4 years. And that's been kind of a reality I've been living with recently, which I can talk about a little bit more later. Um, but I signed with Michigan in the fall of my senior year, and then kind of just was like, well, I get to finish out water polo season, play club, hang out. But so my recruiting like started pretty much freshman year of high school. I started like hearing from coaches with water polo. You're not allowed to talk about water polo until you're a junior. So I would see coaches on the pool deck at tournaments and stuff, and they could ask you about the weather, ask you about your family, ask you like what are some good places to eat in town, but you weren't actually allowed to talk about the sport until you were a junior. So I would talk to these coaches just like small talk and until I was a junior, and then they could start approaching me to talk about the sport.
Just kind of just building your network, getting your name out there, and hoping that by the time you're a junior, they remember like, hey, I talked to her a few years ago,
Hmm.
or at least they follow you for those few years till they can actually talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I also sent out letters uh, to like my top five schools. I just wrote like, "Hey, I'm interested in your school. These are my stats. Come watch me play." Um, and a lot of them did come watch high school games or club games, and so that's kind of how I got my name out there too.
That's cool that they actually answered, because I'm sure there's got to be plenty of people that
Mhm.
send emails and messages to coaches and they never hear back. So that's cool that they actually came. You mentioned, right, that California is a big hub for water polo, and that's got to be another reason that people don't pay attention to it as much. Maybe it's because it's not accessible for everybody across the country. Yeah, I know me here in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, there's no water polo anywhere. You'd have to go downstate to, University of Michigan, and that's a good solid 10 hours away to find water polo. So it's not something people can regularly do. I feel like most sports, right, as they grow, where more people are playing them, then more people start to watch them. You see a lot with like lacrosse and
Mhm.
hockey, which have grown across the country. More people start playing them, and then it grows on TV. So maybe that'll happen with water polo here too, if it starts growing and popping up in different areas that it generally isn't. Then it'll start getting more attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also like with the just attention it gets in the Olympics, it starts to grow a little bit the following year and stuff. So Texas is starting to become a little bit more of a hub. Illinois has some good teams coming out of there. We actually have a few girls from Chicago on our water polo team at the University of Michigan. So you start to see it start to pop up in different spots. It's definitely hard, and like I know I now live in Michigan too. Like around here, there's not very many teams on the west side of the state. I think there's about two, and it's just like finding the space to have a big indoor pool and be able to fund it and get girls who are interested in playing, which will hopefully start to maybe go up a little bit more with just like the media attention water polo is getting after these past Olympics. So hopefully we can see it start to spread a little bit more.
Yeah, for sure. So you mentioned having family in Michigan,
Mhm.
and you said you're there now. But prior to that, did you visit Michigan a lot? Like, so were you used to the weather when you started? Because I know that's a big shocker for people. They come from California and they like can't handle the winters.
Definitely a huge shocker. So I grew up in California. I lived there for 18 years of my life and moved straight into college from California. So growing up, we would come visit for like a week or so during Christmas time or a week or so over the summer. So I kind of got glimpses into it, but I definitely was not ready for it my freshman year, like walking to 5 a.m. lift and it's like blizzarding outside and you're like walking down the sidewalk trying not to slip on the ice and I think it was definitely a shocker. The only winter coat like own still is the parka that the university provides for athletes. So it was definitely a shock, but I would say I'm pretty used to it now, like figuring out a routine of how to deal with the cold. And you kind of just you adapt over time. I'm in my junior year, and so I'd like to say that I'm pretty used to it, but there's definitely still some like shock here and there.
Would you say you enjoy it?
Um, I'm starting to. I'm starting to. At first, I hated it. I'm like, I can't believe it's gray, like majority of the year. But I do love the snow. It's beautiful and it's something that like I've never experienced in California, so it's definitely fun to change it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Growing up with like winter every year, I feel like I don't know. I kind of grow to hate winter at certain parts of the year. Like I'd be happy if winter was December and January, and that's it. Like I can handle snow for 2 months. I can get my outdoor skating or snowshoeing or skiing or whatever in those 2 months,
Hmm.
and I'd be content. But like there's still snow in my backyard. So when it's halfway through April, going on May, and the snow is still melting, it gets like just disheartening. Well, you start to question, why do I live here? I mean, it's worth it, I think, because summer and fall are so
Hmm.
beautiful, but it does get difficult when you have long winters. And the UP, obviously, we got a little more snow than you guys do downstate, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's just not like I would rather be in Minnesota and have it be like incredibly cold but get less snow, and then when spring hits, you don't have as much to melt.
Hmm. Yeah. I think also the perk of playing water polo is all of our competition is out in California. And so we're technically a spring sport, but we start January 1st. So we travel a good 4 or 5 weeks out to California. So it's a nice break from the winter to go soak up the sun. And all the California teams are looking at us crazy because we're in shorts and it's like 50 degrees out there and they're in their parkas. And we're like, oh my gosh, it's so warm. We're like, we've been looking forward to this. So it's definitely like it's been a good over the last couple of years playing a spring sport and getting to travel to California. It's a good break from the snow.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I visited my grandparents' winter out in Arizona, and
Hmm.
I one of my spring breaks when I was in college, I visited, and it was like I don't know in the 60s when I arrived, and I had my shorts and I thought it was great, and all the old people there have full winter jackets
Hmm.
on, and but no, yeah, when you're coming from super cold, and that's 60s, it feels just like a heat wave.
Hmm.
So let's talk about water polo kind of as a sport. Like I said, I don't know anything about. I couldn't tell you a single rule. It looks like a very tiring sport, and it kind of looks like soccer in a pool.
Yeah. So it's like when people ask, because nobody really knows what water polo is, it's the way I explain it is you have two teams, obviously. You have six field players and one goalie. So there's a total of seven girls in the pool at a time. It's 4 8-minute quarters, and then you have about a 3 minute halftime, and you get about 2 minutes-ish in between each quarter. So you don't really get to go back into the locker room and talk about strategy and stuff. It's just quick changes that you can make here and there. And you sub only if there's a goal or a timeout. They just started live subbing, like in hockey, where you can come in and out, but it kind of takes away a whole possession. So it's very, very rare that they do it. Um, so at the beginning of every quarter, you line up on your own lane line, and the ball's dropped at half, and you do a sprint off. So you sprint for the ball. Whoever gets the ball starts they start offensive possession. Which is like kind of similar to basketball, where basketball has like an offensive possession, there's like a transition, and then defense. So it's kind of very flow like basketball where you go back and forth. You can only use one hand to pass and catch the ball, except for the goal, you can use two hands for blocks.
What
Other like
happens if somebody uses two hands? Like
so if
the
somebody uses two hands, it's a turnover. So there's turnovers if you use two hands. If you like get inside, so there's a 2 meter line, a 5 meter line, and a 6 meter line. So it's marked on the side lane line. So our court, like our pool is the course is pretty much made out of lane lines, um, which tell you like they're different colors. So it tells you where like each cone is to go. And like, so if you're outside of the 5 meter and you get fouled, so somebody like pushes you or puts the ball, like pushes the ball back or like comes over you too hard, you get a foul, which gives you a free pass. Or if you're outside a certain distance, you can take a free shot. You get a free shot because you get like 3 seconds before the person's allowed to press you again. So there's fouls, ejections, and then a 5 meter pen or a penalty shot. So kind of in soccer, how you get penalty shots or basketball, you get a free throw. You have 5 meters. A foul is just a free pass. And then an ejection is where you are sent to the like penalty box in hockey for 20 seconds. Your team either is up a player or down a player, and it's like a power play. So you get those 20 seconds to have an advantage to score. And ejections come from if you dunk a girl, if you reach over her, if you go over her back, if you kick off a little bit too hard. There's all sorts of different reasons to get an ejection. And then a 5 meter is if like the player was going to score and you took away that advantage by pulling their arm back or going over their head. And sometimes you like use it to your advantage where you take an ejection on purpose. But if you get 3 ejections, you're majored. So you're out for the rest of the game. So
Very
kind of like a
interesting.
3 strike rule. Yeah. So it's a very, very fast-paced game.
Mhm.
It's back and forth because if you don't score, you keep going back and forth. And then when you do score, you line up at half. And then you start. So it's a running clock unless there's a goal or a timeout. So it's like a very, very fast-paced game and it's full contact. Which like most people I don't think realize until they're there watching it. It's a full contact sport and our only like form of protection is we wear like our caps, which have plastic ear covers to protect your ears from like cauliflower ear and like a wrestling or a boxing type of thing. And then those also are our cap numbers, so like our jerseys.
Yeah, so you really don't have any protection if somebody throws a pass and it's off and you get like domed in the head, or I mean, does that happen often where people just get
Yeah.
smoked?
Yeah, so I'm a goalie. I played goalie at the university, like at school. I've grown up playing a goalie, and so I wear a mouth guard now. I started wearing it in high school just to protect my teeth, and then also there's like a science behind it where if you wear a mouth guard, it can help limit concussions. Um, which I've also had my fair share of because girls will just pick up the ball and shoot it into your face point blank on accident, or on purpose. You never quite know. Um, but yeah, so it's like it's a full contact sport. You get hit in the head. Girls get black eyes from elbows or fists, or sometimes you get kicked. So you just never know what's like the outcome of a game is gonna happen. And then a interesting rule that nobody really quite like knows until they see it is we get nail checked before every game. So the refs will pull you out and they pretty much like rub their hand over the top of your fingers. And then if they can feel your fingernail, you have to clip them or like girls will grind them on the side of the pool decks to get them short enough that they can play. Because if somebody nail checks you in the middle of a game and like they request a nail check, you're not allowed to play until you get your nails checked by the refs again. So if like you're getting scratched and stuff, you can request a nail check on certain players.
Wow, that's really interesting. I
Yeah,
would
it is.
have, I would have never known any of that. It sounds like, just listening to it, it's like, well, everyone should love this sport. Fast paced, physical. I mean, like, that's what people look for. That's why
Mhm.
people like soccer and that's why people like hockey and whatnot, because they're these fast moving physical sports. So, yeah, I think what you said is totally true. The more the Olympics kind of hype it up, the
Mhm.
more it'll start to grow. And growth is slow. Obviously, like you said, you need the facilities and
Mhm.
that costs money and whatnot. But maybe in 50 years, water polo will be one of these sports that people turn on ESPN on a Saturday and they sit there and
Mhm.
watch it. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah, that would be pretty amazing if that's how it worked out, and that's the hope. Because it is a niche sport. There's not much coverage, so our games are put on ESPN Plus if it's like a big tournament. But very rarely are they actually like streamed.
Yeah. And ESPN Plus is great. I have it. And one thing I like is they put a lot on there, but you also have to dig for it sometimes. Like it's
Yeah.
on there, but if you don't know that it's on there, you're not going to find it because it's like way,
Mhm.
way over. You have to scroll 30 over to the left and get past all these other sports. So it is great that you can watch a lot of stuff on there, but if you don't know what's on there, it doesn't really help. So you've had some injury struggles, and you actually just recently medically retired. Was
Mhm.
that like a decision that you had to make? Like, okay, do I keep playing and risk it, or did the doctors say like you have to be done?
Yeah, so it was more of a recommendation for my surgeon this year. So last January, I started being in a lot of pain and we went and saw doctors and stuff and they found out that I actually tore both my labrums in my hips. So both labrums in my hips were torn and then I had a bone overgrowth due to playing since I was little. It's just kind of the way your bones form to the like kind of odd I like water polo is a very in like your body does a lot of you use muscles you never thought you would use and the movements you're doing aren't normal. And so like the movement we do is called egg beater to tread water to stay afloat. And so it's just kind of your hips are in there kind of grinding on each other. And so I tore both my labrums last year and it got to the point where it was so painful that day-to-day things were really hard and it was affecting the way I was playing. And luckily we had a really, really strong starting goalie, Alex Brown. She was a fifth year, set all sorts of records at Michigan. Quite an amazing athlete. And so I was lucky enough to have her still be there last year um to hold that position and I was still learning from her and so I had reconstructive hip surgery last March and came back in September fully cleared ready to go after a long summer of physical therapy and rehab. Came back in September ready to go and kept playing and pushing through and had some really great start of the season. I won like defensive player of the week in our first tournament we had out in Fresno and had a really great start to the season. And a couple weeks ago, it got to the point where it was again super painful to play and wasn't quite performing the way I wanted to perform. And met with my surgeon again, and we were looking at all of the like different outcomes if I kept playing and all of the different things we could do. And so we were looking into getting cortisone injections in my hips, which pretty much is like it's a giant needle and they stick it all the way into your hip and it's supposed to take away some of the pain, but it's not a 100% guarantee that it works. And it also increases the amount of arthritis you'll have later on. So they try to limit how many times they do it. And I would need injections in both my hips. And so the surgeon pretty much was like, if you want to continue life being like an athlete, like an active person and being able to do the things you love, I would recommend stopping playing because you're um ruining those chances. And so he kind of showed me like we went over scans and looked over the outcomes if I kept playing and we ended up deciding to go through with another surgery. So I had surgery just the last Friday actually on my left hip. Um and I now have five anchors in my left hip, and he reconstructed my labrum. And like when he went in there, he's like, "There's nothing left. There was nothing left in there." So I like pretty much shredded my labrum down to nothing. So it was causing my bones to rub on each other, which, as you can imagine, is was very painful. But now I'm back to recovering and ready to just kind of go about life as a normal active person and not return to be a Division One athlete. So it was definitely a really hard decision, but it was for the best.
Yeah, I've spoken with other athletes, at various ages in sports that have had similar type situations where they've had doctors tell them that they cannot continue to play their sport, or if they do, they're risking, screwing up the rest of their life. And obviously, when it's a sport that you've put so much time and effort into for your whole life, mentally, it's very difficult to step away from that. And I know some people like they try to stay and coach so they can be engaged in the game. Is that something that you would like to do at some point just to stay connected?
Yeah, absolutely. I have thought about coaching in the future and maybe looking into some high schools around where I live to maybe help them start a program or help better a program that they have. And just see like how to get water polo out to the west side of Michigan. So it's definitely something I've considered. I because I do love the sport. It's been the last 11 years of my life. And it's every decision I've ever made was how is it going to affect water polo? And then after this injury, it kind of was more of a how water polo was going to affect the rest of my life. So that's how I kind of went about making that decision. But I would definitely love to stay in the sport. And I live with my teammates, so I'm definitely not far from the sport, and I am gonna be supporting Michigan and be a super fan this next coming season. And so I never want to stray away from the sport, even though I don't play anymore.
Right. Yeah. There's a ton of ways you can stay connected, and if you have a good relationship with your teammates, that'll help right off the start, that you can just stay connected with them, and like you said, be a super fan, follow the team, and just stay engaged, and that'll help. Obviously, it's not going to be easy. There's going to be times where you miss your sport, but with having good friends and good teammates, and now you've got the rest of your life to, like you said, still be active. So you can still do things. You're
Mhm.
not, it'd be much more difficult if you kept playing water polo and then it got to a point where now you can't do anything. That would be a harder realization to come to. As difficult as this is now, it would be worse in the end if you were told, like, nope, you can't run anymore. You can't just go for a leisurely swim. It's going to be too painful. You're going to have all these other problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's kind of wrap up the episode in some non-sports things. I like to try to just, I don't know, throw random questions in there,
Mhm.
just to talk about for fun. And if somebody was going to pay for a trip, you could go anywhere in the world for a week or two. What would be your dream vacation spot?
I've always wanted to go to Bali, Indonesia. I love the ocean, grew up swimming and lifeguarding and surfing and stuff. And so I've always dreamed of going to Indonesia to be on the beach and stay in a little hut and snorkel and be in the ocean as much as possible. That's always been a dream of mine. And some of my friends have gone over the past couple of years and seeing their photos and stuff, I'm like, that would be probably one of my like dream spots to go in the future.
Yeah, I would love to go to somewhere that has, like, I always see the pictures of like the Maldives with
Mhm.
the huts above the water, and that just milk white sand and the crystal clear water. And yeah, I mean, I probably can't afford to go to some of those resorts, but man, they
Yeah.
look like they would just be absolutely amazing and so refreshing.
Mm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
always
definitely
interesting.
about it. Definitely think about it too when it's like storming outside like it is today. Definitely is like a dream in the cold weather.
Right. It's hard not to like scroll on Instagram. You see some influencer that's at some like super warm
Mhm.
place. You look out and you see that snow and you get a little jealous. You're like, man, that looks nice. And what I'm experiencing is definitely not.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
it's always interesting to hear where a lot of people say Greece. That's like one of the
Hmm.
most, if I ask people where do you want to go, that might be the one that people say the most. Either that or somewhere like the Maldives, or somewhere that's got beaches and
Hmm.
oceans. Um, Quite a few people say different places in Asia, like I want to go to Japan. And honestly, like for me, I mean, my list of places I want to go is so long. I'll never be able to get to all of them. Like,
Hmm.
there's so many amazing places in the world that would just be awesome to experience.
Yeah, 1000%. I always say I'm like, if I could, I would definitely travel the world if the money was there.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, are you a big music person? Do you like music?
I do. I'm a huge country music fan. Have been since I was little, which is funny because everybody in California is, I would say, not country music. But I'm a huge Zach Bryan fan. Um, I actually got to listen to him before he was big at a country music festival in California called Stagecoach. It's also all over social media. It's a big influencer event now. But I got my older brother introduced me to him when I was in high school still, and so we got to see him on like a really small stage before he got big. So that was pretty sweet. And so since then have followed him till now. He's really, really big.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of guessed what you were going to say country. Looking at your Instagram, I saw that you had been to multiple
Yeah.
country festivals. And I really can't get behind much modern country, but I do really enjoy Zach Bryan, Tyler
Hmm.
Childers,
Hmm.
Coulter Wall, and like the Turnpike Troubadours, and like, but to me they're a little more folky and
Hmm.
that Americana. Like I can't do Morgan Wallen and Luke Combs, and I just can't do it. But I don't know. There's something about the lyrics, like they're just so good, and like a Zach
Hmm.
Bryan, Tyler Childers song. Um, yeah, I just finished binge watching Yellowstone, and a lot of
Yeah,
that
it's a
music
great
is in
show. Hmm.
Yellowstone. So I'm like on a huge, like I've always liked Tyler Childers, but now I'm on a huge, like that's all I'm listening to right now because it's all in the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a great show. I don't know. I thought the fifth season was a little bit of a kind of a letdown. I mean, I wasn't disappointed with the way it ended, but I wasn't also exhilarated by the ending.
Hmm.
Did you watch it?
Yeah, yeah. I watched Yellowstone, and then I also watched the other 18, whatever the other
Yeah,
1923 and the other 1800s one. Those ones were really good.
I've heard a lot of people say that they're better than Yellowstone. I know some people said like 1923 was their favorite.
Yeah, that one was really good. They just had the finale, like the series finale the other night, and it definitely was not how I wanted it to end, but it was a really good sh a really good series.
Yeah, I need to watch that. I don't have Paramount Plus currently, so I was gonna wait and because I know they're talking about a Beth and Rip spinoff, and I was gonna
Mhm.
wait and see if they do that. Then I'll get Paramount Plus when I can just binge watch all of it. I don't know. So, but yeah, great shows. Taylor Sheridan has he's got a good thing going there, that's for
Mhm.
sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, Maddie, it's been a pleasure talking to you and kind of spreading the word on water
Mhm.
polo. Yeah, I learned a lot about it, and I'll have to try to keep my eyes out on ESPN Plus and watch some water polo. Get my friends interested in it, or definitely pay attention to it more than just the Olympics. So thanks for coming
Mhm.
on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening. Please stay tuned for more episodes soon.